on demand in our new Delta Sig University. So be sure and visit that if you haven't already. Jim, that is new since you were with us years ago. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you Jim Leingang. I have known Jim for many years. Jim used to be on the central office staff before I was on the staff. And that was in the early 90s.
Yeah. We don't have to say how old now, Shanda. Come on now.
So it was in the 90s before a good number of you were born, but a few of you I know on here were born then and know Jim as well. Jim works in St. Louis, where I also live, and he is going to be sharing some interviewing strategies and tips today. So some super helpful information. I'm so glad you've joined us. I am going to turn my camera off and unmute. Others, if you have your camera on, go ahead and turn that off. We're going to let Jim do his presentation, and then we'll invite you to come back. Feel free to put questions in chat. Jim will pause every once in a while, and we'll make sure those get answered. So, Jim, thank you for joining us.
Super. Thanks, everyone. And it's an honor to be here. So I think back 92, I moved to Oxford and had a chance to work with just a wonderful group back then, and did that for 2 years. And in those 2 years, I traveled throughout the United States and visited about 120 chapters and universities, helped even start up a few. So Kennesaw State, if they're still around, and helped out in Kansas City. Like Shanda said, I am a native of St. Louis, and I actually personally took just a little time off, not as involved with Delta Sig. So it's really great to hear back from Shanda. So on a personal level, married just a wonderful woman, Andrea, that I met in Kansas City years ago. And we have 2 wonderful boys, ages 17 and 13. And my livelihood and way that I take care of my family is as a staffing specialist. I serve our company, Strategic Staffing Solutions, as an account manager. And prior to that, I started as a recruiter with our firm. So really, what does that mean? Within the staffing world, basically, if I want to put food on the table, I better be really, really good at identifying great talent and presenting these individuals that I recommend to our customers. And I work with, if anyone's familiar in St. Louis, I work with one of the largest utilities in the Midwest. It's a local gas and electric utility. And in the past, I've also worked with, the largest beer maker, which headquarters in St. Louis, a biotech firm, a large rental car company. So you can probably get the gist of who I've helped out. So what do these companies do? They will reach out to either me or my firm, or I'll reach out to them to see, hey, how can I help you? You have openings, and you're not finding them on your own. So as an outside third party, how can we help you? So we'll help them from start to finish. If they have an opening, identify candidates, present them, and then all the way through to once they get started, either they're working for our company as a consultant, or I help them hire them directly. And there's several different phases within the staffing industry, but suffice it to say is that if I think someone's really good, I'm going to invest the time to help prepare them for an interview. And nowadays we know there's all kinds of types of interviews, but this is not a service that an individual's paying me, but yet the revenue that I generate for our company is really dependent upon how well someone interviews. So I want to help prepare them. And sometimes I may talk with one of our candidates for an hour before an interview, and I'm going to go through, here are some steps, here's some advice. So we're going to go through those later on today in just a few minutes. And please, if you have questions, put them out there as much as you want. Again, I don't want to say that I'm an expert within recruiting or interviewing, but I've been doing it for 24 years now. Okay, so any kind of questions, you guys are wide open. Also, for those that were new recently that joined in after we did a little introduction, I did pledge the Untitled Chapter and it was Northeast Missouri State University at the time. It's Truman State University. I pledged back in '89. So yes, I got a few years and I had a lot more hair back then, okay? So off to the start of this, okay? So I'm gonna share my screen for those that wanna see this, but this is, our company is S3 or Strategic Staffing Solutions. I do not own the firm. It is a Detroit-based, privately held firm. And these are some of the tips that we actually share with our candidates as well. First off, and these are, to me, the top 10 tips that I would share with anyone. Enthusiasm and smile. And in fact, my trainer within the central office years ago, Dean Ferguson, told me this, and I've never forgot it. A smile is contagious. So don't forget, whether you're on a video, whether you're in person, showing your enthusiasm and smiling, it is important, and people pick that up. Whether or not it to me is one of those little things that show, are you interested in this? So that's number one. Number two, really, if they ask you certain questions, you really want to show your analysis skills. So I strongly encourage, also have really good questions that you're prepared. And if you only remember two things out of all of this, remember these two. And hopefully you can see it here. What are the top 2 or 3 most critical skills that you, the employer, are seeking in a successful candidate? And 2, what are the top 2 or 3 most important responsibilities or deliverables for this role? And I'm going to ask, and hopefully you guys know this, but when do you think that you ask these 2 questions? And I'll ask this to people that I'm working with, and in the beginning, in the middle, or at the end. Does anyone have an answer or think about it for a second? Okay, the best time to ask these 2 questions is right in the beginning of the interview. And our philosophy on this is pretty simple. If the team or the individual that you're interviewing with is the buyer, you want to find out to them what's most important to them. It's almost like buying a house, buying a car, making any major decision. There are really 2 or 3 most important skills and or factors as far as the buyer wanting to make a buying decision. So if you're the seller, you're the person interviewing, I strongly encourage you, ask this question kind of in the beginning, or ask those 2 questions. And there's a way that I would do this, so it kind of goes with the flow of the interview. If they ask the question, for example, my least favorite question that gets asked to me or to our candidates is, tell me about yourself. I hate that question, honestly, because I don't know what to say. My name is Jim Leingang. I went to Truman State University. I'm a finance undergraduate. I have my master's. I don't know what to say. So I will have probably about a 30-second introduction. My name is Jim Leingang. I work with Strategic Staffing Solutions. I'm an account manager. I've been in the business for 24 years. I manage a book of business now of about $6 million in revenue for our firm. In the first year that I was in the business, I helped generate $250,000 in annual revenue for our firm, and has grown that. So usually my encouragement, again, is have a little introduction, but then as soon as you're done with that, I would ask these 2 questions. What are the top 2 or 3 most critical skills that they're looking for? And put it in your own words, okay? You don't have to say this exactly. And what are the top 2 or 3 most important responsibilities or deliverables for this role? Okay, I'm going to pause because I absolutely think if you remember nothing else and you just remember those 2 and you know when to ask it, do not wait till the end. Then I've done my job here. Okay, I'm not kidding you. This is the most important piece. Okay, I'm going to continue on. Number 3, building rapport and a connection with the interviewers. Hopefully everyone is checking on LinkedIn, or you're calling friends. We didn't have LinkedIn when I was interviewing. When I tried interviewing for the leadership consultant position, it was called chapter consultant back then. We didn't have LinkedIn. Nowadays you do have it. So I would strongly recommend you read everything you can about an interviewer on LinkedIn or every other piece of material that's on the internet, or you're calling around friends. So what you're trying to do is make a connection. Oh, you're a Delta Sig. Oh, where did you go? And, when were you in? And, or do you know this friend? So that's, again, number 3, trying to build that rapport and or a connection with them. Okay. Number 4. So this is really talking about your accomplishments. So to a student or a recent graduate or someone who's been out working, you should probably be prepared that the interviewer is going to ask certain questions, and I like to refer to some of them as behavioral interview questions. Describe a situation when you've had to say no. How have you built relationships? Most people in our industry, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, most individuals will describe their situation and they leave off one main part, and that is an end result or an accomplishment. So we're gonna talk about that later. And if you're writing any notes down, or if you're jotting notes, when we talk about behavioral interview, I'm gonna mention a terminology called the STAR. And over the years we've kind of changed it, but that has to do with bullet number 4 here, and really how to best sell yourself when you're prepared and honest and you're talking about your accomplishments. Okay. Shannon, can you tell me, are there any questions right now? Is everyone good on these for right now? It's
No
gonna,
questions yet.
Okay. I promise you this is gonna make sense as you go through some of these. A through G, these are literally some of the questions that a customer has asked to some of our individuals. So if you have a few minutes and you're getting ready to interview, make the time, spend an hour beforehand doing your homework. Try to come up with examples on these particular questions. And once you get examples that you can talk about or your accomplishments, you can always Google more behavioral interview questions. I'm sure they're out there. There's probably 50 to 100. These aren't the only ones, clearly. Okay. Number 5, check yourself out. Are you the individual that needs to elaborate on some of these answers? We've had individuals, if a customer asks them a question, well, have you ever done this? They'll nod their head. Yes, I have. Okay, so what the buyer is waiting on is for an example or for you to be able to go into it. So you really want to be able to dig in onto those. Okay, so for me, you want to be very focused and have your specific examples ready to go. And we're going to talk about that in what I call the STAR example model. Okay. Number 6, make a great first impression. Cannot say this enough. We had a gentleman do an interview for us. He probably didn't listen. He probably didn't read our advice. He wore a ball cap or like a winter hat. And I said, "Oh, are you cold? Are you outside or something?" He goes, "No, I'm just a little cold." I would never wear a ball cap for an interview, but yet he did. So to me, not the great first impression. We've also had some lately, even though it's video, they're not in a sport coat or a shirt and tie. And I would recommend at this point, err on the side of it's a first impression. So I would definitely look good and try to find out too, if you're going through a recruiter or if you have a friend, what does that person normally dress as? So you want to kind of mirror that.
Hey, Jim, we have a question. On average, how many questions should we expect to answer during the interview?
Okay. So it depends on how long it is. If we have a person interviewing tonight and it's about 15 minutes, and I would expect him to get about 5 questions. And I would say each response back should probably, as you time yourself, be prepared. Maybe that you have an example and you can elaborate for about a minute per question and leave room there for, would you like more information?
Great.
So if it's an hour interview, you may go through 15 or so questions, and hopefully it's a dialogue. And to me, those are the best interviews. You're really just kind of talking about your background, going through your resume, and they do ask you some behavioral interview questions. But I would definitely be prepared for 15 to 20 if it's an hour-long interview. Did I answer your question, Shanda?
Samantha, are you good? Does that help? It's, yes, she says thank you. All right, I'll let you
And
know.
I would suspect they're going to go through, Samantha, they're probably going to go through your resume. And nowadays, most likely will have questions pertinent to your resume. And they may even say, they'll probably add in some of the behavioral interview questions. You definitely be prepared for that now. Number 7, they talk about showing initiative. Let them kind of lead that discussion, but make sure that you can intertwine some of your accomplishments like what we talked about earlier. 8, taking notes. This kind of reminds me of being in school and everything, but for sure, I mean, that's if you're prepared in the beginning and you ask those main 2 questions, I would be taking notes and utilizing what they're telling me as far as their key skills, the key responsibilities throughout the interview. So I have taken my notes. I have talked about the key pieces to that particular company. And feel free, may I take a few notes? If you're in person or if you're doing a video interview and they see you taking notes, it doesn't hurt. And make sure you write the names down of those that are on the interview panel, because as you're sending a thank you afterwards, you want to make sure that you're including it's Shanda, it's Jim, it's Amanda, whoever those names are that you're including in that thank you. Don't wait till the end and you're like, oh, I forgot, what was the name? Number 9. I love this. We even say the ABCs of interviewing is always be closing, but close the deal. If you want it at the end of an interview, I love this line in here, and you'll get this later on, but thank you. It's been great. Ask a closing question. What else would you like to know about my background? What are the next steps? What are the, what's your timeline? I really enjoyed working with you. Those are all kind of closing questions. So that's why I say close the deal. If you really want it, make sure that they know. We had a customer years ago. They called me up and said, Jim, great candidate. I just don't know if they wanted the job. And we always said there was 3 main pieces during an interview. There was trust, there was ability, and willingness. So trust, ability, and willingness. And this individual did great. They trusted him, they liked him, had a great background, but he didn't come across as, hey, I want this job. So make sure if you get a chance, make sure that you let him know, I'm very interested, him, her, whoever it is. Okay. And then number 10, cannot stress this enough, send a nice thank you afterwards. Check your grammar, check your spelling. And within 2 hours, that thank you better be going back to them. And that's an email nowadays. If you really like the job, you can write a handwritten thank you, send it off to the company. Who knows how it's going to get there nowadays if they're working remotely, but I don't get too many of them myself. So when I do get a handwritten thank you, they're pretty nice. So I'm going to pause for a second. These to me are the top 10 interviewing tips that I can share, and a few others that we're going to talk about in a little while. But if you can focus on the baby steps, if you can focus on these, I think that's going to make your life and that interview the best that you possibly can. Okay. Let me go to another one here.
Jim, while you pull that up, I'll read a question that came in.
Sure.
Regarding notes, especially in person, how important is it to just have your implements look professional? For example, leather portfolio and a fountain pen versus a legal pad and a book. How do you think this plays into appearance?
$10, $15, you can get a nice portfolio. I would for sure have that. Now, if you're limited on funds, I understand that. Okay. But I think, if you have a nice portfolio, you can bring your resume in there, you can have references in there, and you can have your notepad. You have a nice pen in there. Absolutely. It looks sharp. I notice that. I notice if someone's got, if a gentleman has really nice polished shoes, I'm looking at all that. Our CEO, when she meets anyone, I guarantee she is looking up and down. Hey, are their shoes, are they open toed, whatever that is. So Yeah, the little things, absolutely, they matter. Again, depends on how much money that you have to spend. That's another thing. And oh, by the way, if you are doing it in person, an interview in person, you don't have to get your resume out. You don't have to show them references. Have it ready to go like a good Boy Scout or Girl Scout. You're prepared that if they ask you, oh, by the way, do you have any references? Oh, yes, funny that you ask. I have it in my pocket. that you can share with them. But you don't need to put it out there on the table. I had the gentleman do that one time, and he was so excited about his references. He just wanted to give it to me. And so just relax a little bit. Let's talk. Okay. Are we good there?
Yeah, and then another question I can answer, would we be able to have access to these documents after the meeting? And the answer is yes. I'm trying to make those available to you all now in the chat, but for whatever reason, it's not allowing me to upload those. So we will email those out to all the attendees tomorrow. So we'll make sure you get what he's sharing with you today. But sorry, I can't upload them. It just says it's not allowed. So there might be some setting in the documents.
Sorry about that.
No, no worries. We'll get it out to everybody though.
Okay. And earlier we were talking about some behavioral interview questions. I think that was number 4, and I had listed 8 different potential behavioral interview questions. So I really do want to spend just a little bit of time how to prepare for this. We'll go through this a little bit, but you can Google behavioral interviews. To me, the second most important thing, if you only remember anything, is to take your time to prepare and to do your homework, right? Just like some of my econ and finance professors telling me I need to study harder. I think preparing before an interview is critical. And it used to be, and no one told me this back then. I know we had a great career center up at Truman State, but I don't think anyone really showed me, hey, this is the ABCs of interviewing. So nowadays, I think one of the best ways to prepare is this STAR model. So the STAR model, it's an acronym, really talks about situation, task, action, and result. So in the page earlier, I talked about, describing or answering one of the questions. Maybe it said, describe a situation when you've had to say no, or describe a situation when you've had a challenge at work. And so what you want to be able to do is really map out what that situation was. And maybe it was describe a situation where you took some leadership in one of your classes, if you're a current student, right? So you want to be able to describe what the situation was, what was your task, what was your responsibility, what were your actions. And to me, the most important piece is this one right at the bottom here, the result. Explaining the outcomes or results that were generated by your action. So here's the little model: situation, action, result. So if you remember STAR, that's the second most important thing that I want you to learn today. So for example, if they were asking you, tell me about a time when you automated a process. What did you do to get the work done? And this is a real life example for me. When I was working for a startup company, I can say I was the only IT person involved, or basically I was there to help out in their sales team, finance team. I helped write a little application to help keep track of their sales and finance. And the end result, in 1 week time, I had automated a system. Maybe it just pulled this data directly into Excel, and it could automatically see what their sales were. And so ultimately I saved 8 hours of time. So to me, the result, and this is where I think probably 80% of people when they're interviewing, they forget to talk about a result. And that R piece of the STAR model is so critical. So I'm going to give you a little spreadsheet here a little bit later, and it's going to map it out. But again, remember, think about some of the results, and these are numbers driven to me. If possible, how have you saved time? How have you saved money? How have you stood out? Those are the end results, okay? Question number 2, here's one. Tell me about a time when you brought innovation to a company. So this is a real life example for me as well. When I first joined the company that was eventually sold to S3, the owner of the company, I worked with him in his basement, a wonderful gentleman named Mike Kendall. And he'd say, well, here's what we're trying to accomplish. Here's the goals of the firm. Go ahead, and if you can help increase our sales, go for it. So there was a local firm that did a lot of telecom software, and I reached out to them, ended up getting a contract with them. And I could talk with you about all the different situations and actions. Ultimately, at the end, this was what was really cool. I helped this customer in 1 year hire 10 full-time employees. And what did that generate? $250,000 in revenue for our firm. So that is the end result. Remember, we were talking about the STAR, the situation, the task, the action, and result. So the fact that I was able to generate about $250,000 in revenue in my first year in the recruiting business, that was pretty cool. So that was an end result. Does that make sense as we talk about STAR model, how you describe a situation? And again, you can go back to that first document, or you can Google behavioral interview questions. And I would strongly encourage that you map out, and you can see this next spreadsheet that you're going to get. So I would map out what the situation was, what was your task, what was your action, and then what was the result. But I encourage anyone that I work with from our company, have about 7 or 8 examples of the STAR model that you can talk about. And on the left, they talk about different competencies, maybe a sample question describing the situation when you had to enlist others' support. And just think about it. This is your homework. So before you interview, I would encourage, have this whole spreadsheet filled out, and then talk about these specific questions with any of your friends, family, and just do a practice interview. So again, these are particular questions that could come up in behavioral interviews, okay? So you're gonna get this, Shayna's gonna share this. So I'm gonna pause again. This is all really about what they call behavioral interview questions. Most likely in a regular interview, they're going to probably ask you some behavioral interview questions. They're probably going to go over your resume, and the time is going to fly by. So we've already talked for about 28 minutes. Believe me, this could go pretty quickly. Okay. Questions about behavioral interview questions or being prepared. Does this all, maybe you can give a thumbs up to Shanda. I'm not looking at the screen, but does this make sense? And do you understand why you should be prepared and really how to sell yourself? Okay, thanks, Amanda. I see you. Okay, I'm gonna go over one last document, and really at the end, I wanna open it up to all the questions. You got me for free. I don't charge anyone anyway, besides my customers, some of our big companies, but I wanna go over one more document, and that are some virtual interview tips. So we're also a member of an organization called Staffing Industry Analysts. It's an independent third-party organization. And so monthly, I'm involved for free. I get to listen in on some staffing experts around the world. And they were saying after the pandemic kind of eases up, they anticipate about 20% of all jobs to be virtual. I love it. I can work from home. I can see my family throughout the day. And I also think you need to be prepared for more virtual interviews. So whether it's right now and the next year, but I think also going forward, you're going to probably see more and more virtual interviews. And whether it's via Zoom, Teams, WebEx, you should have that software ready to go, test it out. And here are going to be the 5 ways to nail a virtual interview. First off, check your mobile device. Well, depends.
Jim,
If you're taking the interview via your phone, whether it's a laptop, make sure that it's battery, it's powered up, that you're ready to go.
hey, Jim, I don't think we see this document. We're still.
Oh,
document. If you
Okay, 1 second.
add, of course. And while that's there, someone did have a comment and question
Mhm.
about the STAR document. Is the second R in the STAR reflection no longer very prevalent in interview responses?
So the second R, I only know of one R, and that's the results. So can I get a little clarification on this one? But I think nowadays that's what customers, so the feedback that I get sometimes from our customers is that if a candidate is not selected from one of my customers, many a times it's they didn't give me an example, they really didn't sell me, or they were okay. So I think that is they don't talk enough about the results, their accomplishments. So did I answer that question, or can I get a little clarification what that question was? The second R.
Yeah, Jess, do you want to provide more framework on that, or did he?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you so much for this is really informative. So some of my peers have told me in the past that they throw a second R onto the STAR method. So following the results, they'll throw in kind of a reflection and how it pertains to the role that they're interviewing for.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I guess my question is, does that become too much? Because I know you said you want to be careful and find the balance and not deliver too much of a response.
I think the reflection is good to have, Jess, and thank you. Alpha Gamma. So Alpha Gamma would be, I'm trying to think of the chapter. It's been a little while. What's the chapter?
Penn State University.
Penn State?
We are.
Oh my gosh. So is that Smiling Larry is up around there? Larry Miraz?
He's not been around for a while, so it might not know him, but yes, that is correct.
Okay. Well, there was Penn State Barron, and I think there was the Penn State, if I remember. Okay.
Yeah.
But the reflection on it, I think even with my own job and talking with my boss, if I reflect upon how I can do better, she enjoys hearing that. So I think, yes, I would have a reflection in there. So definitely you can add that. This is really good. Again, though, I would make sure that after about a minute of your example, that you take a pause and ask the interview panel, would you like more information? And they may say, well, in reflecting upon this, what could you have done differently? And you should be prepared for that. Or what did you learn out of this? And so, yeah, I would definitely be prepared. Okay.
Okay, awesome.
But let them kind of lead that and add on. If you want to add on to this spreadsheet, that's great. Add it in and be prepared. Okay.
Thank you.
Great. And another question too. What other questions beyond those listed should we consider asking the person interviewing us? And are there better times to ask these than others?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So, yes, there's a plethora of really good questions. For one, don't ever ask money questions or benefit questions, though. So not until you know that they really want you, I would never ask those questions. However, if there are questions like, well, I saw that you went to Truman State University. How did your education from Truman State lead you to this opportunity? I love those questions because what's it tell you? That person's done their homework, and most people love to talk about themselves. Even that Shanda Gray, I could tell you that she went to Southwest Missouri State, which is now Missouri State for any of the Kappa Omicrons. But if people ask about your background, interviewers usually love, hey, sure, I'm happy to. So, or if you see that they recently left one company, maybe it's a rental car company in St. Louis, to come join this utility, what inspired that transition? And what do you love most about this particular company? Where are you at? Those are good questions. But again, think about the timing. To me, the top 3 skills and top 3 responsibilities, those are questions in the beginning of an interview that are critical to lay the foundation or the roadmap of what they want to hear. So those 2 should really be done in the beginning of an interview as best as possible. If they don't, already lay out what the job is. Now, if they lay out what the job description is and they say, here's the 7 required skills and responsibilities, I still would probably ask that question so that you can target in what are the most important 2 or 3. Throughout the interview, I think those there's a lot of really good questions that you could ask throughout the interview, and that would pertain to, again, the individual and what they like about the role, and if they could give clarification about that, again, because you're listening to what they're giving you, those hints, what they want to hear, so that you can close it. Again, your goal is to get an offer or to get to the next round. And so the ABCs always be closing. At the end of an interview, I still encourage those closing questions. How do I get to that next step? How do I, what are the next steps? What kind of feedback? What are your questions? What are concerns? Oh, and I almost forgot, in the beginning, one good question that I do like is, thank you for the opportunity to interview with you. What inspired you to select me for an interview? What did you like upon my resume that helped motivate you to interview me? And sometimes they're going to walk you through what they saw on your resume, or maybe they have a friend. Maybe they saw where you used to work or you did an internship. They've already called and said, hey, well, I've already called and Shanda Gray said that they like you and definitely should interview you. Well, you should be calling Shanda afterwards and thanking her, but that's another good question in regards to what really stood out on my resume that you really liked. Hopefully that gives you another question. And if you have other questions and you want to email those to me, what do I think about them? Absolutely, Shana, hopefully you're more than welcome to share my contact information afterwards. People can call, email, text, that's fine. Just say, hey, Brother Jim, I saw you on the interviewing tips. I'd love to be mentored. If you have any advice, or you say, hey, I just landed this great interview. I'm nervous as hell. Can you give me a few more tips? And I'll probably walk you through it again. I don't mind. Helping out adult SIG is one of the best things I can ever do. Okay, we've got about 23 more minutes. So let me make sure we go over a virtual interview. And can you all see this? Shanda, can you see it? Can Jess or anyone else tell me they can see this?
Yep, we see it now.
Okay, so check your mobile device, check your web software and your network connection. I cannot tell you how many times I've had people that literally 15 minutes before the interview, they're like, oh, I'll check the Teams link, no worries. And about a month ago, this happened to one of the candidates we had. He went to click the Teams link. He says, Jim, I've used Teams before, no problem. Well, what ended up happening is that he needed a Microsoft update to his Teams software, and he didn't have enough memory, and it ended up giving him a blue screen. Basically, it killed his laptop. He calls me freaking out. Jim, what do I do? I said, well, luckily you got a phone, right? Okay, here's your phone. Here's the number. Make sure you've called in. So what he did not do was check his device, his software, and that almost cost him the interview. I'd also strongly encourage you check your network connection 24 hours, so a day before, and then about 30 minutes beforehand, and do a test call. So like a lot of times with our candidates, I'll jump on the same Teams link that we get from our customer, and I'll make sure they're looking good, their background looks good, it's not too dark, not too light. So again, it goes back to checking your mobile device, your web software, your network connection. That's number one for a virtual interview nowadays, and definitely practice it. Okay, we're in Delta SIG. We know a lot of Delta SIGs. Practice it with a friend, your big brother, your little brother, whoever it is. We talked about dressing to impress, at least from the top up. I won't share my secret. I am wearing jeans today, but you guys probably would never know. So at least from the top up, okay? And think about what you're wearing. Some of my female colleagues made sure that I added this in about noisy earrings and bracelets and stuff, not to have it in. Again, keep it simple. I did read somewhere too, for those that don't have glasses, even if there is no prescription, get a pair because it makes you look smarter. I have to wear them because I can't see, but that is one of the accessories I do recommend that you do have, okay? So again, dress to impress, at least from the top half up. You gotta love this next one. Gesticulation is not articulation. And yes, that's exactly what I said, but it's controlling your hand movements. You don't want too much, in other words. You see me on this one, our old central office executive director, Mike Mazer, oh, he would always put up his hands and he's like, tell me, you know, he'd get all excited because maybe I missed a few things. You want to watch what you're doing on a video interview nowadays, because if you do some of that, you can only imagine your finger gets caught in the wrong spot and it freezes up. So we don't want that. Okay. So watch what you're saying and how much you're doing it. I think a little bit of hand movement is not bad, but you don't want too much. Okay. Number 4, for all those marketing majors out there, location, location, location. This is pretty simple, right? Make sure that where you are in the room when you're taking a video interview, that it's a good location. 1, that you don't have too much in the background. 2, that the lighting is appropriate, and that there's not something in the background that's a little inappropriate. But if you do have something cool like a Star Wars poster, I saw that one time and I was like, oh, I like it. It was a really good thing that we could talk about. So that I was okay with. So again, number 4, location, location, location. Number 5, remember to smile. Smile is contagious, even on a video interview. It's so important, y'all. I cannot stress that enough. We talked about it as far as the top 10 tips. Smiling is contagious. That I would definitely do. I'm going to pause for a second, show you my Cardinals mug, take a quick drink, and see if there's any questions.
There is, Jim. Alexis wonders, how do you sell yourself with professional seminars you attend or class research you did if you don't have much experience in the workforce?
Yeah, I think your professional seminars, that'll help out. Try like hell, y'all, to get an internship, do some sort of work over the summer. Otherwise, it may be some of your core projects. I remember we had like a group project back when I was a senior, and you may want to have the highlights from there. What did you guys talk about? I remember we did a presentation on, and we had to create a business called Weddings Are Us. And so we were going to be similar to like Babies Are Us. I think we stole the title, but Weddings Are Us, we were going to be wedding experts and help do wedding planning for individuals. So, but whether it's seminars, you know, what have you learned from them? But yeah, you can't just be going to school, can't be going to class. You got to have something. Delta Sig is a great one. And then you can take on some of your responsibilities. Hey, tell me what it's like as the VP of membership. What did you learn? I was on our recruiting committee, loved it. Who would have thought that getting on a recruiting committee and being on our membership committee back in college would be what I do nowadays and have for the last 24 years. So whether it's seminars, whether it's organizations, leadership roles within a fraternity, it's your internships, those are all be very, very good to have. So make sure you're doing, if you don't have some, it's not too late. You can definitely still sign up, volunteer, do those things. Okay. Hopefully did I answer that question?
I think that was good. Alexis, let us know if not. Also, I just think general volunteering with various things can definitely spruce up a resume. Would you agree, Jim?
Absolutely. I can tell you, community service to me it's a great point to be able to make that connection. So our company volunteers in St. Louis at St. Patrick's Center. So I'm actually on their committee to help for the Veterans Day. And if I saw St. Patrick's Center on a resume, I promise you that would stand out, and I would probably be talking about that for 20 minutes. And oh, do you know this individual there? Do you know this one? Or what did you do? Or so community service, absolutely. How you're helping out in with charitable.
Great. What other questions do you all have? You're welcome to unmute yourself if you'd like to just ask it directly, or you can pop it into the chat and I'm happy to read it for you. Jim, you've given so much great information. You might have taken care of 99.8% of it for people already, which is
Well, I have everyone's name up here, so I'm just going to start calling out if people don't. Like Luke, thank you for the thumbs up. Peter, I saw you earlier. If you don't ask a question, I'm going to call you out here. Zai Kai, where is Zai Kai
Call
at
me,
too, by
Jim.
the way?
I'll ask a question.
Okay, thanks, Peter.
I don't have a question per se. I've been in the working world for as long as you have, probably a couple of years longer. So what I'd like to throw out to all the people on the call, one of the questions I always ask when I'm in an interview, I ask the interviewer, if you could change one thing about your company or department or job, what would it be and why? And I asked that just to see what they would say, and it kind of shows them that I've done my homework in thinking of a good question, and it shows them that I could think through things. And
Yeah.
That's a great question to ask, and be prepared to be asked that too.
yes, yeah.
Love it,
Mhm.
Peter.
Mhm.
Where are you from, Peter?
I'm Boston, Massachusetts.
So you cheering for Brady, or are you cheering for my Chiefs?
I think I'm going for Brady. Sorry.
Hey, Jim, here's a question. Thank you, Peter, for
you're welcome,
asking
Shannon.
and sharing that. What are some ways to practice for an interview?
Can you say that one more time?
Sure. What are some good ways to practice for an interview?
First off, fill out that sheet, and to practice the behavioral interview sheet that I listed. I would have those 7 or 8 questions and different examples written. And then to practice, call up Jess Hall, call up Samantha, call up Julia, and say, hey, would you mind helping out? I really want to practice this, and you can do it just like this. You can set up a Teams invite and have them ask you these questions. You can also, if you don't have a friend that you're comfortable with, do it in front of a mirror, and you'll see yourself. Record yourself if you need to. Nowadays, we all have recording devices, and look at yourself. Oh my gosh, first time I recorded myself making a sales call, I hated it. I still don't like hearing my voice, but those are some of the ways that you can practice nowadays. The beauty of Delta Sig is you have met a lot of good friends that will help you with this. In fact, my first job at GE, I'll never forget my buddy, Al, put in a good word for me and helped me get that interview, and we practiced ahead of time. And that was only 26 or so years ago. So shout out to my buddy, Big Al. Never forget you on that one. And I met him when I was pledging. He had pledged right before me. And just the power of Delta Sig, I cannot stress it enough. So hopefully you can practice with a friend. If not, your mother, father, brother, sister, someone like that. And where you're practicing, doesn't matter. It could be at home. It can be outside. Does that help out?
I think so. And Jim, like you said, recording yourself is a very interesting thing to do, and you can learn a lot. Even back before I worked for the central office and I was in sales, they would record us so that we could watch our sales presentation. And while most everything was great, I was in a chair that swiveled. Apparently, I couldn't sit still. So something to keep in mind as you're going into a conference room, and if your chair moves and you're a mover, you've got to learn to control that. Otherwise, you make everybody dizzy. So recording yourself, you can learn those little tics you have that you had no idea existed.
And don't forget to laugh a little bit too, y'all. I won't forget interviewing at the central office. I was as nervous as could be. I flew for the first time, flew into Cincinnati. Dean Ferguson picked me up. And I remember interviewing, and Robbie Holtz, who was an alumni of Ida, knew he had worked there. And then I was interviewing with Dean and Mike Mazer, and they asked me something, I was walking around meeting everyone. And I never forget, I met Robbie Holtz, and I had memorized his name. For all the brothers out there had memorized names, I had memorized Robbie L. Holtz. And when I saw him, I said, "Oh, you're the man, the myth, the legend." And they laughed, and I kind of just laughed at myself. I didn't think anything of it, but again, don't forget to laugh a little bit, have a little fun. And if you can't, then you're interviewing them as well. And if you don't really get along, or if your gut feeling's telling you, I don't know about this place, go with your gut feeling. Most of the times it's right. Or you can, write out a little chart to see if you like pros and cons behind it. But most of the times my gut feeling has told me. I remember sitting for 2 hours waiting for an interview at this one place, and my gut feeling was not good. Sure enough, I got the offer, and I was not interested. I turned him down. So, okay, what else?
Any other questions? I don't see anything else in the chat. I did put Jim's email address in there so that you have that, so that when we end this and you have that question you forgot about, you can reach out. Oh, Jess has a question. Go ahead, Jess.
I have another one. So this popped into my mind when we were talking about interviewing virtually. Something that I tend to struggle with is, being that it's in a virtual format, I feel like I can accidentally cut people off sometimes. So like, what is the best way to kind of mitigate that problem and work around that in a virtual setting?
3-second rule, Jess. So 3-second rule, because I'm the same way as you. I get so excited. I want to jump in there. I want to give an answer. I would strongly encourage count to 3. So 3-second rule. Remember that, y'all. We have some folks that are very analytical, and they're still thinking about what their next question, or thinking about an answer that you just had. So if you jump in sooner than that, you may kind of break into their train of thought. So if at all possible, count to 3. Another little secret, have a bottle of water right next to it. They ask you a question. Take a little sip, think about what your answer is going to be, then you can jump in. Cool, Jess?
Awesome. I had to wait 3 seconds. Thank you.
I like it. Okay.
Great. All right. Any last questions?
Not a question here, but I'll just say hi. Jim, you won't recognize my last name, but you might recognize Iota Nu 497. This is Lisa Altagi O'Donnell. How are you?
Oh my gosh. How are you? It is great to see you.
Well, actually, unfortunately, you don't see me because I don't have my video on today.
I see your name up there, Lisa O'Donnell. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm actually on a job search right now currently, and your session
Happy
today
to help out.
So I'll be in touch.
Yeah, my specialty, so anyone on this, my specialty is really within the IT or digital realm. And that's what our customers have really focused on paying us a fee for. However, a good recruiter knows a lot of people, and I'm very blessed in that matter. So even if I can't directly help someone, especially someone that I've known in the past or 20 some years ago, I'm happy to send a resume over to a customer and say, here's a freebie. And they know if it's coming from me, at least there's a certain level of trust, and it's not going into the black hole. So many a times people will apply online, and I still see that. And to me, it's a necessary evil, but that's like maybe 1 or 2% of the time when people end up getting a job. About 70% of the time people get their new job is through a connection, through a recruiter, and or a combination of them. So think about people that you may know if you are on a job search. That's a little different. It's not our topic of interviewing, but as far as to get an interview, really you have to be proactive. You have to be reaching out, and I call it the friend of friend theory. So, or 6 stages of what is 6 stages? It's the Kevin Bacon theory. So you will
6
really
degrees
be
of
able to
Kevin
connect
Bacon.
with someone that way. Yeah, 6 degrees.
Yeah.
So, but Lisa, yes, really good to see you. I think I had a lot more hair back then, right?
You might have, but I'm not going to tell.
And I do still see Tina Matson or Tina Pryor every once in a while. I think she was around your era too, right?
She was my class, yes.
Yes, and Al McReynolds was the gentleman I mentioned earlier. So
Yep.
I don't know if Al was there too. So
Yep.
Well, for the rest of you that weren't even born yet, we'll
Hey now. Okay, any other Ida news on or anyone from California? I spent a lot of time in California and Texas and Michigan and
Yeah,
Georgia. Gosh,
coast to
all over.
coast on here.
Sorry?
Hey, we have time for probably one more question if anyone has it. And if not, like I say, you're welcome to send an email to Jim. Tomorrow, I will send out the documents he shared today to all of you. And that way you can look at those further and fill those out as you get ready for your next interview and you nail it. So Jim, thank you so much. I don't see any other questions, so I think we'll let people escape to head back to class and work and wherever they may need to be. But we'll keep in touch and we'll invite you back to help teach a bit more later if you're willing.
If anyone is happy to help out, anything for Shanda Gray, she's awesome. So thanks,
Well,
everyone.
sweet.
Thanks
well,
for
thanks
joining.
Everybody. Have a great afternoon or evening, wherever you are. Take care.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Jim.
Thank you. Have a good one.